Welcome to Among Champions. I'm your host, Ramon Dominguez, and today I had the pleasure to be speaking to a champion jockey, winner of 4,450 races. Among those races, 178 graded stakes. And among those 178 stakes, 25 grade ones, also winner of an Eclipse Award, My Venetia Award, George Wolf Award, Eddie Arcaro Award, inducted into the Suffolk Sports Hall of Fame. And what am I missing? That is an amazing resume. And if that's not enough, in his time after the retirement, he has now gone into be a racing analyst, amazing as well. So please help me welcome my good friend, Richard Migliore. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Ramon, and thank you for the kind words. Very blessed, my whole life, very blessed to find horses, or horses found me and gave me just an incredible adventure.
Wonderful. Tell me, you didn't grow up around horses, or I should say, your family was not really involved with horses at all. How did you get involved with the horses?
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, which is not noted for horse country. But my Little League baseball coach owned the pony ride concession in Coney Island. And when I found out he had horses, because I was always intrigued, I asked if I could come by, and I started working for him, mucking stalls, doing just stuff in the stable. Eventually started to ride some. But my horse adventure career really took off when I went to live in my grandfather's house out on Long Island, which was much more rural at the time. And since I already had a familiarity with horses working with them in Brooklyn, I found a farm and I would tell my grandfather about it. And one day he said, I know the people that run the farm. And he talked to them. He got me a job. I got $1, Ramon, for every stall I mucked out. And at the end of the week, I could either take money or riding lessons. So I took riding lessons. I guess I made an investment in myself unknowingly.
Wonderful. So, pony taking lessons in riding first, and then taking riding lessons, and then what was the progression to then actually going a little bit faster?
So I wound up making friends with two guys, Carlos and David Figueroa, their cousins. And they were into ponies and pony racing. And I started racing ponies with them on weekends. The 4-H used to run pony races every Saturday morning. And we took it very serious. We weren't like the other kids showing up with Western saddles and having to kick their ponies. We had gotten an old exercise saddle, even pared it down more, so it was more like a racing saddle. I would ride the ponies this short. We took them and we taught them how to break from back then it was the football poles, and someone would drop a flag. We taught ours, once they turned around and faced that direction by the football poles, they were going to leave.
What
So
distance are we talking about?
200 yards.
Okay.
So the start, obviously very important. And ours would be 3 in front right off the break. Literally, Ramon, we were like 29 for 30 in pony races. And the only time we lost, the pony bucked me off in the middle of the race, because what we would do is Thursday mornings, we would train the ponies before school. And the ones that were racing on Saturday, we would give them extra feed, extra vitamins, and keep them closed up in the stall for 2 days. They wouldn't see the light of day. So when they came out and they saw the sunshine and 200 yards, so that pony was so high, he bucked me off. But even in the other ones, I was so small then. I was the smallest one. I actually grew later on where it became difficult to make weight. But I was so tiny, I couldn't pull these ponies up. I had to run them up a hill at the end of the field to get them stopped. And one day I had won 2 or 3 pony races, and William and Cakes, the field was right behind the bake plant, the Entenmann bake plant. And he and his wife were in their office on a Saturday morning doing work, and were watching the pony races out the window. And they see this little tiny kid win 3 pony races in a row, and they came out and introduced themselves to me and became woven through the fabric of my career. I was only 12 years old at that time. And when I got inducted, in fact, into the Long Island Sports Hall of Fame, the Suffolk County Sports Hall of Fame, William Entenmann is the one who inducted me.
That's awesome. Wow, wow. So there was a little bit of a connection there with racing. I'm assuming they were already owners with thoroughbreds, but you went from taking riding lessons to now pony races, and what led to how did you ended up at the racetrack?
So a lady was at one of the days we had pony races that owned a tack shop. Her name was Sharon Miller. And after the card of pony races, she came up to me, she gave me her card, and she said she had a friend that had a training center, a farm on Long Island further out east, and that I should really consider being a jockey. And she gave me his number and said, give him a call. And I already knew I wanted to be a jockey. I was living that dream on ponies. And every Saturday I would watch the racing show with Frank Wright, Dave Johnson, Charles C. Canty, and they were brilliant broadcasters for racing. So I called the gentleman that had the farm. His name was Bill George. And he asked me if I had ever been on a racehorse. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. I've galloped racehorses. I was little, too. I didn't even weigh 90 pounds. And he said, Sharon Miller told me you looked really good in the pony races. Come on out. So I
have to ask because I'm envisioning this. You look really good in pony races. The one thing, even when you were talking about how you guys were ahead of your competition on these pony races, how short were you riding? Or were you riding sort of a Western style, like really long, or already short?
I was riding so short. I was riding 6 inches of stirrups. That's about
Okay,
it.
continue. That's no surprise. Okay.
And watching the races every weekend, obviously you fall in love with certain jockey styles. And I always wanted to look like Angel Cordero on a horse, the way he would stretch out. And Braulio Baeza was one of the people I idolized back then. So I got out to the farm on the weekend, met Bill George, had never galloped a racehorse, but told him I could. But I could see it in my mind's eye. I saw how they took the cross, how they held their hands, the positioning. And they obviously put me on an easy horse to gallop. And I galloped her twice around this half-mile track, and it all went good. And at the end of the morning, he asked if I wanted to spend the summer at the farm. They had rooms upstairs. And I did. I spent the whole summer at the farm. And every week or so, you get on a little tougher horse. Like they start trusting you more. You can handle more. And I learned so much in those few months over that summer getting on not only thoroughbred racehorses, but quarter horse racehorses.
How old were you at that time?
I think by then I was 13.
13. Wow.
13, yeah.
Richard, fast forwarding now to when you are at the racetrack and now riding, and I'm obviously skipping some important steps, but I am interested to hear from you because you started off under a contract, something that was common on those days, an apprentice to have to be under a contract. And by the time I came to the United States in 1996, that no longer existed. What are your thoughts on looking back, the pros and cons of being an apprentice under a contract?
Yeah, it's obsolete at this point. Not too many riders come up under contracts to one stable anymore. I think probably I was maybe the last higher profile rider to come up under a contract. I think there's the positives and negatives are like when I was a kid, it was hard. You had to work extremely hard. Not only did I gallop horses in the morning at Belmont, I would have to go to my boss, Steve DeMauro's farm in the afternoon, work all afternoon, not mucking stalls, painting fence, whatever needed to be done, farm work. Get done 6 o'clock at night, get back to Belmont at 7, start 5 o'clock the next morning at Belmont. And at times, I think I resented it back then. It was just so much hard work. But in hindsight, looking back on it, I feel like it instilled a work ethic in me. And it gave me a better insight, a better knowledge of the entire game, not just the riding side of the game. So I had a different appreciation of what the grooms do, what the hot walkers do, how everybody works together to make these horses the best they can be. So I never really had that moment where I was having success and I took it for granted. I know what goes into getting a horse to the races and how difficult that is, let alone win. So in hindsight, I'm so happy I came up under a contract. The other thing, Ramon, is Steve DeMauro was coming off of years where he had Eclipse Award winners, Wajima, Dealey Precious. He won the Eclipse Award as champion trainer. So for him, I went to work for him when I was 14.
Oh.
For him to have faith in me and as much credibility as he had, it instantly put other trainers at ease. That kid must be okay. So it really gave my career a huge boost, a huge leg up. Then the flip side of that is when you start having success, he was my first call. If he wanted me in Monmouth this day, it didn't matter what I could ride anyplace else. I was going to
Yes.
be at Monmouth. So there were trade-offs, but I'm actually now, as an old man, very happy that I had that experience.
That's funny because even when before you talk about the experience with Steve DeMaro in the barn, I right away when you talk about even living at the farm or the training center farm, that's something that also applies that you were there in contact with the horses. I'm sure that beyond getting on the horses, yeah, you have to do maybe mock some stalls and maybe put some bandages. Although you don't do that as a jockey, still it's an amazing foundation that really contributes to the overall as a horseman. Yes, and in the moment, obviously, as you said, there are some resentment like, why am I doing this, especially being young? But in retrospect, you wouldn't change a thing. So great.
Yeah.
Richard, who were the people that you surrounded yourself in your early years as a jockey that were influential in your career?
Obviously, Steve DeMoro, his son Steven, who's a steward now at Gulfstream. He trained successfully for many years and more like a brother to me now. That since I'm a kid, he was my big brother. Obviously, they had a profound influence on me as a horseman, but also as a person. When I got to them, Ramon, I wasn't very sophisticated. I was a very unfinished product. I didn't speak very well. I was a little bit on the rough side. I had gotten in some trouble as a kid, and Steve DeMoro is the one that really shaped my character and basically taught me right from wrong and how to conduct myself, how to deal with people. Dennis Brida and Julia Brida, I worked with them even before that at the farm, and they became incredibly influential in my life. And Dennis was the first person. So many people, because then I was really tiny, and then I hit a growth spurt, and I got much taller, and so many people would tell me why I couldn't do it.
Yes.
You're going to be too big. It's too hard. A million reasons why I couldn't do it. He was the first person that when I told him my intention, I'm going to be a jockey, looked at me and said as clear, of course, why not? You certainly can. And that made me, to have an adult, somebody in that position tell you that you're not crazy, that you're not dreaming. It's beyond a dream, that it's an attainable thing. And that was huge. So Dennis and Julia, certainly. David and Carlos Figueroa, still very close with them to this day. One of the grooms at Steve Tomorrow, Daryl Howe, everybody called him Ricky. I still don't know why. He's one of my best friends. He was one of the grooms. And my wife. I met my wife when I was 15. She was a better rider than me. And people laugh at me when I say that. She didn't ride races, but she was an alternate on the Olympic team. She 3-day eventing, hunter jumper, dressage, and she could gallop horses I couldn't gallop, tough horses. And those people, you could share not only your dreams, your aspirations, but your doubts, your self-doubts, your struggles. I think I pretty much hit everybody. That core of people are still people I'm close with to this day. Unfortunately, Mr. DeMaro has passed away, but very blessed to meet the people I met along the way.
And I'm sure that it was easier for them to do it with somebody like you because you put yourself in that position and it was clear that you had that conviction. And I speak from because your story resonates with me. You and I are both pretty tall to be a jockey, and precisely what you said, there was no shortage in my life either of downers that, and some of them really come from a good place trying to protect us. Man, I
Sure.
didn't want you to be disappointed, but what a fresh breath of air to have somebody like Dennis who said, listen, dude, you of course, why not? Wow, that is so important. Yeah, wonderful.
Ramon, people used to tell you a lot that you look at the size of your feet, you're gonna, that was like a tell that you were gonna grow too big. And people would tell me that all the time. I had big feet. I started squeezing my feet into boots 2 sizes too small just because I didn't want to hear it. And believe me, my feet looked like they were squeezed into boots 2 sizes too small.
Well, your feet is probably at least 2 sizes bigger than mine. We share the same corner. However, the one thing when I reached a growth spurt, because in even through high school, I was always the shortest in class. It's funny looking back because as you had to do a line to go to, whether it was a bathroom or it was from the shortest one to the tallest one. I don't know why. But I was always the first one. But then in my early teenage years, I feel like I was going to be a giant. And oh my God, that was so difficult for me because I knew that I wanted to be a jockey. I cried a few times saying, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm getting too big. I wasn't squeezing my feet to make it look shorter, but I did maybe subconsciously start working with a little hump on my back, trying to look myself a little
Sure.
bit shorter.
Yeah.
Stupid stuff. But yeah, I was so determined to be a jockey, and I didn't want even my height, which I had no control over, to really be something that was going to keep me from doing it. Richard, through all of your years of experience, and you were in the jocks room, and you're one of the greatest, but also you were surrounded by the greatest from many different eras. What makes what is the difference between a good jockey and a great jockey, in your opinion?
It's such a great question because I've seen riders have more ability and accomplish less. For me to be great, to be a champion, to really succeed at what you do, you have to be so committed to it. It's an art. It's people talk about race riding is a lot more subtle than trying to get out to another horse or do that. There's so many little nuances to it. And I think committing completely to the craft of it. There are jockeys to me, and there are race riders. A race rider is somebody dedicated to the craft. You were a race rider. Coming up with race riders like Angel Cordero, George Velasquez, Eddie Maple. I walked into a room as a child, basically, full of Hall of Famers. And on one hand, yes, difficult to compete, get good mounts. But if you had any aptitude to ride at all, you were going to learn from them. And you were going to pick up little things from each of them. For me, like Angel Cordero taught me how to compete. I thought I knew how to compete. He took it to a whole nother level. And if you didn't raise your game, you were going to be run over. So it opened my mind to really how to prepare and compete, not give a quarter, not take a quarter. Eddie Maple, about being even. I used to be very up and down. If I won, I was over the moon. If I lost, I was breaking something. And that's not sustainable as a jockey. You're doing it every day consistently. A jockey wins the Derby. It's not like a quarterback that wins the Super Bowl. What are you going to do now? I'm going to Disney World. No, you're getting on a plane to go ride someplace else, right?
Right, a 5,000 claimer the following day, yes.
Exactly. It's so constant. So you can't be so up and down. And he worded it to me like this, and he always became a very much a mentor to me. He was in my corner. John Milano, our valet, had him
Love
as
it.
well. Just as good a person as you'll ever meet.
Amazing guy, yes.
Amazing guy. He's my daughter's godfather. That's how much I think of him. But one day he looked at me and he said, I think I had a bad day. And he said, all right, so you lost on a couple of favorites, say, or 5 favorites, whatever. What are you going to do tomorrow morning? Get up early, go to the track, get on horses. Okay, what if all 5 of those horses had won? What were you going to do? Get up early, go to the track, get on horse. He says, so why do you go so high and so low? He says, try to stay more even. And honestly, that probably gave my career more longevity. Things that he would tell me like that. Even about food. When you can't have food, you obsess about food. Something simple he said one day to me, food's always going to be there. Made it a little bit more understanding in my mind. George Velasquez taught me about timing and class. Man, so much class, the way he conducted himself, how he dealt with people. I'm going to be leaving people out, so I apologize in advance. But these were the people that had a huge influence. Where Georgie Velasquez would put you on the side and tell you something that you should do or you shouldn't do.
What a
Just absolute classy gentleman. Angel Cordero would exploit it, put you in a tough spot, make you pay for it, and you learn the hard way. But you learned. And he wasn't doing anything wrong. I have so much respect and friendship with these men now, and they were men that I competed with. And I don't think Angel and I always got along. But now we're on the phone constantly. He sent me videos the other day of some race he and I were coming down the stretch together. Of course, he always picks one. He beats me.
I tell you what, him and John Velasquez, I know firsthand while speaking with him about jockeys in general, and your name always comes up as one of the top guys that they mention, and they look at me like, Ramon, Richard was an awesome, amazing jockey. I'm like, I know, I rode with him. And just quickly to tell you something about you, which was so freaking frustrating for me, because my dad and my brother follow my career and watch my races. And although they never rode and were never really around horses, they are very good critics. Like, they were really good watching races. And my brother one day said to me, Ramon, why don't you like handwrite like Richard Migliore? He's so strong. I can do that. Whatever. So just leave me alone. Yeah. Anyways, they are.
Ramon, listen, we did get to ride together, and admittedly, I was past my prime. I was more towards the end of my career at that period of time. I could still ride. I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, but there was a window, and I think there's a window for every jockey, that you're at your absolute peak physically as well as mentally. You need experience to have that mentality and see things clearer and anticipate better. And when you're young, your physical skills are so intact. You haven't been beat up. You haven't been chewed up yet. Unfortunately, I feel like that window for me wasn't as wide as maybe I would have liked it to have been. I started getting injured probably about 5 years into my career, and I could still ride, and my heart was still intact, but there were things I had to adjust. After I broke my neck in '88, I've never felt the bottom of my feet since that day. So I used to, there was a bootmaker named Tashan that used to come to the jockey's room, take everybody's measurements. I had him make me boots with the thinnest soles because I couldn't feel the stirrups. And if you look at a lot of my wins after 1988, my toes are curled around the stirrups because I had to grip them.
Make sure that, yeah.
So that I didn't slip out. And those are things like I would never let anyone know when I was riding, because then it's a weakness in my game. Trainers, well, he's not 100%. But there were a lot of things that I had to adjust around. And like I said, I think I got better physically. My physical skills weren't as at my prime. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Having said that, honestly, and we can see naturally there are jockeys as any athlete that pass their 40, depending on their body, and everybody's system is different. They are not as strong, they physically don't look the same. That was not the case with you. You were not at your prime, and I would rephrase that by saying you were not really receiving the opportunities that you did when things were going extremely well for you, but you were not by any means diminishing your skills on top of a horse. You were at the top, just like John Velasquez is these days.
Johnny's remarkable to me, though.
Amazing.
The first thing you notice with riders is their legs.
Their legs,
aren't
yeah.
as good. And that's your foundation. His legs look exactly the same as it did 20 years ago. He still rides his short. He is a marvel to me. I really couldn't be more impressed. And Ramon, I got to say this because my career ended because of injuries. But again, I was towards the latter part of my career. And I feel bad saying that because you were in your prime when an injury ended your career. And I just always felt like that was so unfair in so many respects. Listen, you're a Hall of Famer. Everybody knows how great, but you would have rewritten a lot of the records.
Thank you. Pleased with the career, and we just turned the page. Was there a turning point for you in your career when everything changed?
I will say, I think I got a little bit, man, I said earlier, you don't take things for granted because you come up the old school way, but I do think I reached a point in towards the late 80s that I ride a horse, win a race, great, next, and jump on the next one. And then I had that accident in 1988, and a lot of people don't realize for a couple of days they didn't think I was going to make it. Then I was never going to walk again, and I spent 3 months in a hospital getting healthy enough to walk out of a hospital. And everybody thought I was finished. My career was over. I think even a lot of people close to me. And I'm telling everybody, I'm going to ride. And of course, because I was getting healthier, I was getting better. But so they didn't want to discourage me. But everybody was like, that was so far-fetched. I rode 6 months after I got out of the hospital and won with my first mount back, a horse named Glimmer Glen. And I made myself a promise when I was going through all that I was never going to take a single moment for granted ever again. I was going to treat every single race, every single horse, every single person I encountered, the groom, the hot worker, the trainer, anybody with the respect and reverence they deserve, because we all do this together. And I was so blessed to have that. And now that it's almost gone, it's my responsibility to embrace it and make sure. And I'm going to tell you, to the end of my last win of my career, I'd gallop back and I would feel it. I would think about it. And I would think about the struggles that it takes to get there. And I think it made me a better rider, a better person, and certainly made me enjoy it more.
Awesome. I know you're super grateful because you live from day one to the last day. You were living your dream and you still continue. You're an extension of the career that you had and doing something, even if it's different, still it's connected to the sport, which I don't think that's optional for somebody like you and I. When we go to and talk about your, again, days as a jockey, what do you miss the most about riding and what are you the most grateful for from your days in the saddle?
Obviously, winning is the first thing. Nothing replaces that feeling of accomplishment and get into the winner's circle and getting your picture taken. And especially when you contributed to the victory. There's a lot of times the horse is best, going to win with any competent rider. But when you had a hand in it and maybe made the difference. A lot of what I struggled with, Ramon, when my career actually was over, was I missed the routine. I missed my day was so regimented and laid out for me. I knew I was going to be up at 5:15. I was going to be at the track before 6. I was going to work horses, get to the jockey's room, mix it up with you guys. That's a routine. You become a part of a family, maybe even a bit of a dysfunctional family. But yeah, and you got to realize you start doing something so young that you're almost a little bit lost when you don't have it. I struggled mightily. In the first 6 months, I went to a very dark place. I'm not a depressed type of person. I was depressed. I felt like I had lost my identity. I made an announcement to my father when I was 11. We had gone to Aqueduct to see the Toboggan Handicap. Back then, they didn't have winter racing. They closed in December, opened up about mid-March. And the first stakes race every year was the Toboggan Handicap. And my father would always go see the opening weekend stake at Aqueduct. I grew up 8 miles from Aqueduct. So I went out with him. We watched the Toboggan Handicap. George Velasquez won it on a horse named Due Diligence. And we got on the train to go home. And I said to him, I said, "Hey, Pop," I said, "I'm going to be a jockey." And he said the right things. He said, "You want something bad enough and you're willing to work hard enough for it, you can achieve anything." And then I told him, "I'm going to win the Toboggan Handicap." And same thing. I won 6 Toboggan Handicaps.
No way.
And for me, every time I won the Toboggan Handicap, it's not the biggest race. At one time, it was a grade 2. I don't even know if it's graded anymore. But every time I won it, I actually would get emotional because I could still see that conversation with my father and the fact that I actually got to do it. It was very important to me. Growing up where I grew up, you were aware of the Kentucky Derby or whatever, but that might as well have been Mars. Aqueduct was my backyard. So that was something tangible to me. So I was always very proud of that and would get emotional about that. But getting back to losing your identity, because like, again, it's 11 years old, you proclaim what you're going to do and then you get to do it. I'm a bit ashamed to say that I felt like I lost my identity, because really, what is my identity? My identity is being a father, number one, a husband, a friend. I have such a different perspective of from the time I was riding till now. But in that moment when I couldn't ride anymore, I really felt like, who am I? I have no idea who I am anymore.
And honestly, but it's so easy to see and understand, and who better than me to understand what you're talking about, what you went through, because we talk about horses being creatures of habit. We as humans are creatures of habit. You were doing the same thing over and over. The junction, you spend more time in the junction than anywhere else, than at home. So when that day comes that you're no longer the jockey, it is definitely normal to feel so identified with the profession. Yeah. But what is even more important is your wisdom to recognize that's not who I am. That's what I did. Yes, I'm proud of my accomplishment. I look back at my career with a lot of pride and a lot of joy, but that's not who I am. And you beautifully stated really who you are and what is more important in your life. But yes, that is something that unfortunately it happens to all the athletes. And while talking to some of our peers that are retired even on their own terms, I realized some of them have not been able to really turn the page when it comes to that identity crisis with what they did, which is sad. Richard, speaking about all of the things that you went through, and you briefly touched on even early on in your career getting hurt. And among the many injuries that you had, you broke your back, your neck twice. To say that you had quite a few injuries is a huge understatement. And despite that, you always came back to ride in great form. However,
Thank
I'm curious to know if in those times when you were healing, was there ever a moment when you stop and say, okay, when is enough? Or the fear will cripple in and say, I don't know if I really can go out there. I want to kind of get into your mind and take me back
Sure.
to some of those moments, because it is easy said than done. We're talking about injuries that really are life threatening, and having one neck fracture or neck injury is one thing, but having the second one is another thing. So tell me about those days.
It's interesting because I remember times, and it wasn't as severe an injury as like a spinal injury. But when I broke my arm really badly in '99, horse actually stepped on my arm and snapped it in half. And when I woke up on the racetrack and the EMTs were just getting to me, I could see the way my arm was bent. That wasn't right. And that was, to me, the most traumatic injury. I had compound fracture of my radius, my ulna. My insurance company, Lloyd's of London, their doctors ruled it a career-ending injury. And when I was going through it at that time, and that was multiple surgeries to fix my arm, I felt like I was ready to give up. I was like, I just don't know if I can do that anymore. I don't know if I can go through this. And it's amazing what your mind and body, how they work hand in hand. When you start feeling better, how your mind starts to heal. And it goes from almost, I don't think I can do it anymore, to I can't wait to do it again. The pain washes away, and missing it is more than being afraid of it. And I don't think I ever rode with fear, but anybody who tells you that fear doesn't exist is lying to you.
And it's
You've been behind a
necessary. It's an important safety mechanism. Let's just call it that. Yeah. Can you imagine if you have zero fear, you go out there and do some foolish stuff? Not that we don't
yeah,
do
well,
foolish stuff sometimes, but even crazier.
yeah, I just step out on the street. You look both ways before you cross. No, that's fear of getting hit by a car, right? Otherwise, you just walk out and get run over. But yourself, being behind horses, see a rider doing something he shouldn't be doing, and he's going to clip heels, and I'm stuck right behind him. Don't do that. That moment, then put it away, let it go. It goes by the wayside. For me, life and certainly racing is risk and reward. And for me, the reward was always greater than the risk. Like I said, you have your moments where you're beat up and you doubt you have that determination to overcome it, but then you start feeling better and then you start missing it. Listen, I was told by my doctor at the last accident, and they fused 5 levels of my spine, that you can never ride a horse again, that in the NFL, he's the spinal specialist for the NFL. If a player has a 1 level fusion, they recommend they retire, but they don't have to. 2 or more, it's automatic. You just can't take a hit. You don't have the stability. So when he said it, I was in that moment where I was just beat up. I was still in the hospital. I just got out of surgery. Fine, it's over. It's over. I don't care. Then you start feeling better, and I started missing it. I went to 5 different doctors trying to get the opinion I wanted, and everyone would look at my CAT scans and X-rays and MRIs. No, you can't. You're retired. And I got to the point I was going to go to Tijuana. David Flores, rider, great guy, had a friend that was a doctor, and if I paid him, he would okay me, clear me, get medical clearance. So I told my wife, Carmela, I said, listen, I'm going to go to the bank. I'm taking out this amount of money. I'm flying to San Diego. David's going to pick me up, bring me to Tijuana, and I'm going to come back and start getting ready to ride. And she stayed so calm, and she said, I love you unconditionally. She said, but while you're there, find an attorney too. So then you start looking at it, and you come to that realization that, yes, you have to turn the page. What was a blessing for me, Ramon, was the opportunity to do television and be a part of the game on the other side of the fence.
And we'll touch on that in a second. Two questions that I have prior to speaking about your career now as an analyst. You had an incredible career once again. At the same time, knowing the magnitude of the Breeders' Cup and watching when you won a Breeders' Cup, what did that mean to you in that moment?
It meant everything. It really meant everything, because I had some unfortunate circumstances around Breeders' Cups in the past. I broke my leg right before Artie Schiller when he won the Breeders' Cup Mile at Belmont. And honestly, that's what led me to going to California. It was like my third injury in 3 consecutive years. And you know how it is when you get hurt, you come back, you rebuild your business. Every time I was getting to the point where my business was getting rebuilt, I'd get hurt again. And not the trainer's faults. They younger riders they're winning with. You're on the shelf. You're the older guy now, getting hurt all the time. And you lose your outfits. You lose your business. And then I had an opportunity to go to California. And I felt like I was at a point in New York that I either was going to retire, which I didn't feel like I was ready to, or I had to reinvent myself. And had a family meeting, talked it over with everybody. And that's why I went to California. And that's what led me to the mount on Desert Code and got my first Breeders' Cup.
And away they go to a perfect start. Mr. Neitlinger quickly into stride, goes straight to the front. California flag getting up second. Idiot Proof in the white cap is right there too. On the far side we have One Union showing good speed. Get Funky dropping back into mid-pack. They couldn't be going any quicker. Then it's True to Tradition in the black cap. Up alongside of that is Only Answer. Here's the Irish filly, Fleeting Spirit, 8 lengths off the leaders. Then Rouse the Cat. In behind that comes Desert Code, who's back third last. Salute the Countess second last, and Storm Treasure is last of all. Down the hill they come now, and here's California Flag coming through on the inside, and California Flag takes the lead. Mr. Neitlinger's got to find more. It's 3 back now to Idiot Proof. One Union is in with a big shot. Then True to Tradition, Diabolical on the outside of that. Then comes Get Funky. Homeward Bound going very wide as Mr. Neitlinger. California Flag the leader, but here comes a wall of horses. True to Tradition, Idiot Proof in the white cap. Diabolical on the grandstand side, coming home gamely now. And Diabolical and Frankie Dettori strike the front. Coming with a late run, Storm Treasure on the outside. And here's the Irish filly, True to Tradition, coming home gamely. Diabolical, and now here's Desert Code. Desert Code gonna get up. And Desert Code got up to beat Diabolical. Close for third. Maybe Storm Treasure just got there ahead of Hero's Reward and Fleeting Spirit.
So it was maybe a different route, but I got there. And then, to be honest with you, Ramon, I thought that was top 5 rides of my life. Not because it was a Breeders' Cup. There are little nuances to riding down the hill at Santa Anita. And I felt like I hit every mark that day.
Which I didn't. I don't know those nuances, although I run in Santa Anita, not like you, because you. But I will say that watching the race between the 8th pole and the 16th pole, when Diabolical is making the lead, I didn't think that you could win it, because at that point, would you still cover up? And as you angle out, honestly, I don't think there was enough real estate for you to get up. That was incredible, yeah.
Well, but that was the thing too. Like the first few times I rode down the hill when I was riding at Santa Anita, I felt lost. I felt just a cork on the river, just going this way, going that way. And then you start to, actually a horse that Ron McAnally's taught me, and a 7-year-old named Tycoon from New Zealand. We're in the gate, and people don't realize you're looking at the top of the grandstand when you're in the starting gate. That's how high up you start. You're up on Colorado Boulevard.
Wow.
So the first 100 yards is a massive drop. That horse, we're in the gate, and again, I don't know how to ride this. I'm trying to figure it out. And the horse kind of looked back at me and said, I got this. And he did. He switched to his right lead around the right bend. He switched back to his left lead on left bend. And that day, the light bulb went off. So that horse taught me how to ride the hill. And one of the things about it, Ramon, when you're coming from off the pace, you can't move before the dirt. Mm-hmm. That's inside the quarter pole. So it feels like
it's waiting too long. Yeah.
Getting late. how many times when I was learning to ride on the hill, I moved before the dirt, and when the horses get to the dirt, they scatter.
Mm.
And you get caught pinched in between two or sent 10 wide. So you had to be even more disciplined, more patient. And as much as I want to go, wait until everybody, boom, explodes like that, and then find who your live cover, who you're going to follow. So we're coming down the hill, and Desert Code used to race up on top of the pace. That day, I rode him out of the gate to get position. It was a big field. And we went about 100 yards. And this is a horse that had won 5 times down the hill. So he knows the hill. He started pinning his ears. And I said, man, he's telling me something. I got to trust him. So I just put my hands on. He backed up to second to last.
Were they going too fast?
They went the half in 41-4. They went a sub 42 half mile.
I don't know that I have
downhill.
never even heard of a 41 and 4.
No, and basically the horse told me, hey, this is too fast. I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm back there, and at first I don't know, maybe he's just not his day. He was a big long shot anyway, but I knew he would give me an effort, right? And at the 3/8 full, he started leaning on me, and I have horse. Now I got a lot of traffic in front of me, and I got a lot of distance to make up. So obviously you want to start creeping, but I said, no, don't wait till after the dirt. Wait till after the dirt. And there was a point where Edgar Prado, I was holding about 2 paths for myself, give myself room for when the horses move at the dirt. And Edgar Prado angled in to try to fit in that spot with me. And if you watch the overhead shot on YouTube, I go out and I put my horse's shoulder on it and force him on the outside of the horse's heels. So when we get to the dirt, that horse ducked out hard. Edgar Prado got sent out about 12 wide. Sean Bridgmahan was circling on a horse of Asmussen's. He got sent out even wider than him because he was hung up outside of Edgar. And I got to cut the corner and then be able to sift out. And we were together. And when they got sent out wide, I was 3 in front of them. And I only beat Sean's horse about a half a length.
So in that moment, one of the things comes to mind is that all of that huge sacrifice of going to California, leaving the family behind, and I'm sure there is a time where is it worth it? Yes, it was worth it, because had you not gone there and reading these previous horses and really understanding the dynamics and how difficult or different it is to ride on going across this dirt, the outcome would not have been the same. So that's wonderful. What a great story. Richard, last question that I have regarding the jockey career. What would you want a young rider or somebody who is contemplating becoming a good rider to understand before they go and chase the dream of becoming a jockey?
Go into it with your eyes wide open. It's very difficult. It's very achievable. But do it for the right reasons. Do it from a place of love and passion. I've seen a lot of riders come along that wanted the big car, the money, the house, the accoutrements of success. Maybe less love for the animal, less love for the game itself. And I think that you're always better at anything that it comes from the purest place of passion and love. And I think that if you really want to do this, dedicate yourself to it. I tell young riders now when I talk to them, you have a job where an ambulance follows you around. You owe it to yourself to be the best you can be at it. You want to be half as good and risk your life every day like that? I think you owe it to yourself. And then what you said, for every athlete, there's an end. Every baseball player, there's a last at bat. There's a last football play. When it's over, do you want to look in the mirror and go, I could have done better with the ability God gave me? You have to respect that. You have to understand that you have been given this gift to be able to do something not a lot of people can do. Don't waste it because you don't have a do-over.
Love it. Yes, definitely. In order to succeed or to accomplish your goals, especially in this profession that is so demanding physically, mentally, emotionally, you cannot halfway do it. You have to be all in. Kudos to you for saying that. You and I know that to become a jockey, although it is a profession, most of us do not have a formal education.
Sure.
But also most jockeys do not have a plan B. it seems like your transition from your last day as a jockey to an extremely successful career as a racing analyst. And it's funny because in the beginning of us speaking right now, you said something about how when you were really young, you were not really that articulate. I'm like, well, I don't know, somewhere on the line, you really went to college because you are expressed and you communicate extremely well. Tell me, how did you land into this field and this new career of a racing analyst?
So I announced my retirement at the Belmont Stakes draw in 2010. And I had known for about a month that the doctor had told me my career was over, but I almost felt like I needed to say it publicly, and maybe that would help me get a little more closure to it. And I went out there and I explained, the situation and that I was retired. I was 44 at the time. And went home, and that's when it really slapped me in the face. I don't do that anymore. That's over. And within an hour of getting home, the most amazing thing happened. I got a phone call from Amy Zimmerman, who was running HRTV at the time. Now, I had known Amy from my time in California, and she had also, on YouTube, there's the Rescue 911 episode about my accident in '88. She produced that. So I met her back then when she came to my home to do that. So she called me and said to me, I really think you would be terrific on TV. Would you like to give it a try? And I had a neck brace on and I was still beat up. And I said, yes, I would love to, but can we wait till I feel better? And she said, when you're ready, you call me. So to have that positive reinforcement that quickly, that somebody still thought I had value to do something else other than ride a horse, was incredibly, almost a relief. Wow, maybe I do have something else to offer besides throwing a leg over a horse. So we got through the summer and I started feeling better. And I called her, and the first thing they put me on, Ramon, was Breeders' Cup Preview Day at Belmont. So a big racing day.
You went from kindergarten to college, okay?
Right now. And I think I was terrible. I think I was awful. And I drove home, and my wife and I have we've been together, we married almost 40 years. We've been together 45 years. We talk to each other. We don't hide what we're thinking. So when I walked in the house, she said, that wasn't so good, huh? And I said, no, I think I did a bad job. I just wasn't comfortable. I didn't understand everything.
I had to understand, prior to this debut as a commentator, was there any training or just based on your experience, they say, go in the air?
That was it.
Okay.
That was it. I had done, do you know at the 7/8 pole by Clare Court at Saratoga, they have that set, and the OTB does the Capital does the soda. I had done 1 year, every Saturday morning, I was on that show for an hour. It was a segment with me. So I did have that as experience, but that was it. This was a far different thing. And we both, my wife and I, agreed. She said that wasn't so good, and I agreed. But we both agreed, well, they won't be calling back. They called back. And the second thing I ever did was the Breeders' Cup in 2010 at Churchill Downs.
Awesome.
And one of the greatest things happened along the way. I started getting paired up with Lafitte Pincay and Scott Hazelton. Two of the most generous, warm people you're ever going to meet in your life. And they taught me. I think there's a tendency, there's only so many horse racing TV jobs to go around, right? So a lot of people will guard their spot, their position jealously. Not these guys.
Wow.
They taught me how to prepare. They taught me how to do it. And just being around them, like riding with good riders, work with good people on air, good on-air talent, you're going to pick up things. And I credit them with my progression and my improvement. And again, their generosity, unparalleled. And they're two of my dearest friends to this moment. Love when I'll be working with Lafitte Pincay all weekend at Oaklawn. Don't get the chance to work with Scott very often, but when I see him, we're like a band of brothers.
Wonderful. I'll tell you what, being surrounded or in contact with so many different horse racing fans, it is so frequent that people come to me and say, "Oh my gosh, we love to hear Richard Migliore because he's so insightful, he's so knowledgeable." And I honestly, this goes back to my days as a jockey, spending time with you in the same corner. That one thing that is really a great example of your passion and insanity for the sport is that no matter what kind of day you were having, even if you were, let's say, in a bad mood because the day wasn't going well or a favor got beat and just making that up, if in conversation a race will come up from before, first of all, you have a photographic memory when it comes to racing.
Horses.
And oh, but your face will change and you will remember and be able to tell me about those days and with attention to detail what happened. And it's really just fascinating because you can help to be like, wow, tell me more. So wonderful. And yeah, so this is not surprising that you have been so successful in this new role. And while talking about this, it's also important, and especially for the young people who are listening, that things don't happen by accident. That although you didn't have a quote unquote preparation to be now in front of the camera, this didn't happen by accident. Again, that Amy Zimmerman out of the blue called you to say, "Hey, you want to be on TV?" It was because, one, you have a great reputation. You are somebody with integrity. You are somebody knowledgeable. You're somebody who, despite maybe finishing high school, you express yourself very well. You're well-rounded. We can talk to you. I can talk to you about anything outside racing, and you have understanding of the world. So you have done your work as well. So it's not about waiting at home that the opportunity or somebody's going to knock on the door. You gave yourself, just as you did writing, the best chance to position yourself in the best spot to really receive that opportunity that you have received.
Listen, thank you for that. But again, you got to credit the people around you. Steve DeMauro impressed upon me when I was a kid how important it was to communicate to people, that I was going to be talking to royalty, to titans of industry, to grooms, and how to conduct yourself properly. And I don't like being intimidated, and who does? But I remember I would be in a conversation with someone, and so everybody knows, I only finished the 8th grade. That's as far as I went in school. I never went back after that. I would hear a word or they would talk about something, and I either didn't understand the word or I didn't know, I just wasn't as well versed. I went and bought a dictionary, and I would, at night, what was that word, and go look it up and try to expand my vocabulary, improve. I started buying the New York Times every day so I would know more about what was going on in the world, so that when somebody did bring up something, I wouldn't be there. I could interact. And if there's one thing that you want to tell young people, obviously, always improve yourself. If you're not improving, you're going the other direction, right? Constantly try to make yourself better. But find something you're passionate about. Find something you love. I love talking about horses. I love talking about the game. I love it. I love the game. I want to be here. I got up, I drove here from New York, got in yesterday. I was on the backstretch in the dark this morning because that's where my happy place. I'm in my comfort zone. And I'm talking and mixing it up with people. And Ron Moquette took me to his house to show me all the memorabilia and all the race clippings and old racing forms and stuff he had. I spent an hour at his, I could have spent 10 hours at his house with that. So I think if you find something you love, continually improve. And I go back to, I talked earlier about every Saturday I would watch racing from Aqueduct, Belmont, Saratoga, wherever they were, with Frank Wright, Charles Ciccone, Dave Johnson. They were so good. And I was enamored with that. So when I'm doing TV now, I'm thinking to myself, am I being that for some kid on the other side of the TV? Because they continue to fuel my passion for the game. We could be out in the street playing stickball. 6 o'clock Saturday, gotta go. I'm gonna be in front of and I've talked with Dave Johnson about it since. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to talk to Frank Wright about it. But in Saratoga this summer, Charles Ciccone came to the set and she gave me the nicest compliment, and what an incredible job. And these are the people I looked up to, and the fact that they're giving me that positive reinforcement. Ramon, I'm so blessed, genuinely blessed.
Awesome. But I love also the fact that you know that there is a responsibility on your shoulders. You did it when you were a jockey, and now there are people who are following you and following your footsteps. Congratulations, my friend. This has been awesome, Richard. Thank you. Thank you so much for speaking with us about your life, your incredible journey, and what you continue to do and how you are impacting in a positive way the sport and the younger generation. Thanks again. And yeah, for
I hope I can give the game half as much, a quarter of as much as it's given me.
I can say the same thing. Absolutely. We are blessed for sure. Thanks again. And to our followers, thank you for the support. If you haven't done it yet, please make sure to subscribe. And until next time, from Among Champions, inspiring stories from elite minds. You have been listening to Among Champions. If this sparked something for you, make sure to hit the subscribe button and catch the next episode. It's packed with even more strategies and stories from the top.